So, after 5.5 years of waiting and only seeing the character of Doctor Strange pop up as a supporting role, the long-awaited sequel to Doctor Strange is finally here. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Time to review it.
Stephen Strange, your reckoning is long overdue.
First up, spoilers, obviously. Although, by the time this video comes out, which with the rate I'm putting out videos will probably be something like early 2023, this shouldn't really be an issue, but just in case. Anyway, back to the review. I'm gonna be honest, when this was first announced, it wasn't exactly at the top of my list of most anticipated Marvel movies. I do really like the first Doctor Strange movie though. I think it has a lot of creative action and visuals, and is one of the few Marvel movies that actually has a genuinely great third act that thankfully doesn't rely on a bunch of CGI armies fighting each other and just throwing a bunch of shit on screen, and instead has our protagonist actually doing something clever. But when this was announced, I didn't like the sound of this being a PG-13 horror movie. There aren't too many of those out there that I would consider good. And then the director left, seemingly due to creative differences. But then that all turned around once Sam Raimi was brought on board to direct. I'm not only a fan of Sam Raimi's style of filmmaking, and especially how he directs horror, but also, of course, I love his first two Spider-Man movies. Third one, not so much, but that wasn't really his fault. I would even go so far as to say Spider-Man 2 is up there as one of my favorite movies of all time. The trailers for this looked pretty solid, although amid hearing a bunch of rumors, I was a little bit worried that this would just be more of a cameo fest than a Sam Raimi movie. The reviews for this movie seemed to be good, but not great. A little bit low for a Marvel movie, but I still stayed cautiously optimistic. And now that I've seen it, I honestly thought that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was an absolute blast. I love this movie. This is one of the best MCU movies ever, and I think it's the best superhero movie we've gotten since, I don't know, Into the Spider-Verse probably. Yes, I liked it even more than the Batman and Spider-Man No Way Home. Sue me. I understand why some people didn't like it as much as I did, but as a fan of both Sam Raimi and Marvel, this is the exact kind of movie that I frankly didn't know I even wanted. The thing I loved most about this movie was definitely how much Raimi's directing shined through. I was a bit worried that, like most MCU movies, this would have lacked style, but thankfully, this really is a Sam Raimi movie first and an MCU movie second. It's full of his style of camera work, editing, and cheesy moments, which I know didn't work for everyone, but it definitely worked for me. I also really appreciated how this movie was pretty violent and brutal, not just by Marvel standards, but also by PG-13 standards. Black Bolt's death, for instance, was one of the most gruesome things I've ever seen in a PG-13 movie. And if you saw this movie opening weekend, then you'd know how much that took the audience off guard. Speaking of Black Bolt and the Illuminati, that aspect of the movie seems to be dividing audiences, but I loved all of it. At first, I was a little worried with them introducing all these characters in the most fan-servicey way possible, and I'm like, okay, I know where this is gonna go. Strange is gonna have to earn their trust, and they're gonna team up and defeat Wanda. I mean, we just saw something similar in Spider-Man No Way Home. But instead, they just subvert all expectations and have Wanda just murder them all in some of the most brutal ways possible, and it was amazing. Although I'm sure most Marvel fans were left disappointed that their fan favorite characters died, but I don't care. It was fun. Only thing I didn't like was John Krasinski's performance. He sounded like he had just been told his lines before the camera started rolling, which I guess might have been what happened, with his parts apparently being part of reshoots. Krasinski's not a bad actor, but I don't know, maybe they should have got Ian Crawford back. He was good in those movies. I mean, if you're getting Anson Mount back from that awful Inhuman show that no one watched, then, why not? But yeah, even with a few characters, or maybe even that entire sequence being added in with reshoots, I still thought it fit into the movie really well. But there were some little elements of fan service which I appreciated as well. Like Christine using that vase thing that was used as a one-off joke in the first Doctor Strange, and then it being used in this movie, and it actually sends people to hell. That was a nice, unexpected payoff to that joke. I've seen a lot of criticisms from people saying this movie has no impact on the characters and nothing to connect to thematically, but I would disagree. When Strange meets the evil version of himself, we see that Strange is actually very similar to Wanda in a lot of ways. Because that version of himself has also traveled across multiverses to find a world where they're with the person they love, also killing a lot of people and destroying universes in that process. Even though it wasn't the Doctor Strange that we were following that did those things, that scene was meant to be about him confronting the worst aspects of himself. I mean, you probably knew that, but the point is, he's seeing who he could have become. So they're not two completely different characters. And even Doctor Strange from the 838 universe was traveling across universes to find salvation, as Reed Richards puts it. But maybe he was also trying to find a universe where he ended up with Christine. I found that parallel between Strange and Wanda really compelling, and it's not something I noticed initially, and I also thought it was a little light on character work once it ended. But once I caught on to how Strange and Wanda's character arcs complemented each other, it made me appreciate the movie a lot more when I thought about it. It's very similar to the parallel between Peter and Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2, where they both have this internal conflict where they want what they can't have.
It was my dream.
Sometimes, to do what's right, we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams.
And while that movie ends with Peter accepting he can't be with MJ because he has a duty being Spider-Man, she luckily makes a choice to be with him despite that. But in this, Strange has to accept that he can't be with Christine because she just doesn't love him back. So it's kind of an inverse of Spider-Man's 2 ending in a way. It's good. It's good stuff, man. This is a good movie. Also, sorry for sounding bored during most of this, but that's how it is recording in a crowded household, and you kind of gotta whisper, but also sound like you're not whispering, and so it sounds very monotone. That's just how it is. Okay, but as much as I want to have this video be nothing but a defense of this movie, I do need to talk about some of the stuff that didn't quite work for me. I feel a bit conflicted on how this movie treats Wanda, especially after the events of WandaVision. Personally, I think WandaVision would have benefited from having Wanda go fully evil at the end. I think it would have been more interesting, but that's not what we got. So to have her be evil in this, it is something I wanted to see, but I think the change was a bit too sudden. But I also think, in many ways, Multiverse of Madness finally addresses that what Wanda did in WandaVision was downright sadistic and evil, and it's something that the show failed to acknowledge. I think this just makes me wish WandaVision handled some elements differently, because now this movie is left with the task of turning Wanda into a villain, even though her turning evil isn't what this movie is about. I think ultimately it was a better decision to have her be evil from the start, even if it did feel like a sudden change in character. I guess that's just an issue of having to deal with the cinematic universe. I think the pacing was too fast in the movie's first act. It went from Strange going to Wanda for help, to all of Kamar-Taj preparing to battle her in the span of like 5 minutes. The movie on more than one occasion also gets bogged down in exposition scenes. There's so many scenes of characters just explaining stuff to Doctor Strange that it does get quite repetitive. I did enjoy the scene of Mordo explaining the Darkhold and Dreamwalking though, just because of the insane editing and transitions, and Danny Elfman's score, which elevated the scene so much for me. Makes me wish every scene of exposition was just edited like that. Overall, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness wasn't exactly perfect, but I still thoroughly enjoyed every second of it, and I would go so far to say that I even love this movie. I'm just so happy that this was a Sam Raimi movie, and that he was able to do what he does best. This was so full of memorable scenes and moments, like the monster's eye popping out, Wanda becoming a horror movie villain, Bruce Campbell, okay, that was just fan service, but still, the Illuminati getting destroyed, the music fight, Strange coming back as a zombie. This movie was just a blast, and did a great job reminding me why I even like superhero movies in the first place. I'm giving Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness a 9 out of 10. Is that a bit too generous? I don't care. 9 out of 10. Anyway, that's what I thought about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. If you want, you can follow me on Twitter @CinemaGeekYT, leave a like, and subscribe for more videos like this one.